Alright, hey guys, Simon here. We are in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. We've finished the game, but we're looking at architecture. And today we are going to look at the aqueducts. So the aqueducts, as you may already know, supply water to the city of Rome. They were built by the Romans. And water is quite important to a city. And so the aqueducts was one of the things that allowed Rome to become as big as it was. At one point, the biggest city at the time, with about 1.5 million people living in Rome. There's one of the aqueducts in game. The aqueducts in game aren't that impressive, but we'll have a look at them anyway. Let's see. So there it is. There's one of them. So they, in the game, they just come through the city walls, and they're like giant bridges for water. And in Roman times, they would have led all the way into the interior of the city in Rome, although after the fall of the Roman Empire, they were not maintained very well, and most of them fell into ruin. And that was one of the main reasons why Rome, like the population of Rome, declined so much. It was because of the neglect of the infrastructure. So here's one of them. And we're gonna go read through all the stuff in game, and then we can go read Wikipedia. And can I catch this guy? Let's not waste time on him. So here you can see that actually I can catch him. No, I can't. Never mind. So here the aqueduct ends there, and the water is just pouring into this basin, or supposed to be pouring into that basin, which is reasonable. I mean, you would imagine that underneath here there would be a cistern, and then you can draw water. There's a bucket right there, so if you need water, you can just kind of come here and draw the water from the cistern. Not sure how accurate that would be because this is right next to a cliff, so it's not really a good place for a cistern. I think what it's supposed to do is to extend further into the city, and back in the Roman days, the water would be supplied to the various fountains around the city, so they're basically public water sources that are just continuously flowing and supplies water to the people in the city. Which is kind of good. Basically, if you live in Rome, you get free water. I mean, without the water, obviously, you can't live there, so that's how it works. In the game, let's see what the game has to say. So, database and locations, and we can sort these so that it gives us bridges, arches, aqueducts. There you go. So there's 4 in the game. Aqua Antoniniana, built by Caracalla in 212. The Antoniniana? Why would you call it Antoniniana? Was a secondary channel of the Marcia, or Marcia, designed exclusively to supply water to Caracalla's private baths. Thanks to several repairs by various popes, the Antoninia remained functional far longer than its counterparts, and well into the 10th century, at which point it was supplied for several hundred more years solely by the tears of peasants. Yeah, okay, so the popes maintained this one at least. Functioned well into the 10th century. It was designed for Caracalla's private baths. Not sure how useful that is. Like having just, I mean, the baths could get quite big, but it was a private bath. It wasn't a public bath, so didn't really help the people that much. So terminate the Caracalla. All right, so this is the baths at the end of that aqueduct, built between 212 and 216 during the. Wait a minute. Oh, it's not. It hasn't actually put the filter back on. That's annoying. All right, so Aqua Mercia or Mercia. I can't. Is it Mercia? This impressive system was the longest of the 11 Roman aqueducts, running a staggering 91 miles. Built between 144 and 140 BC, this is 140 years before Christ. 91 miles of aqueduct. So it's a very substantial engineering project. As you can see, it's like an artificial river. The aqueduct was named for its creator, Praetor Quintus Marcius Rex. Quinitus. Wait a minute. Quinitus? It was maintained and even expanded for the better part of 200 years, but typical of any free public service, by Nero's reign, so many people siphoned water out of it for personal use, the flow was barely a trickle by the time it arrived at the city. Well, that sucks. But it also kind of just demonstrates how useful these things are. Like, people siphoned water out of the aqueduct, so that it didn't actually reach the city. But it basically just means that people need more aqueducts. You know what I mean? Like, they need water. And so you just kind of have to build more aqueducts, maybe. Let's see. So the other one is Aqueducto Claudia, one of the ancient aqueducts that supplied the city. At its peak, the Aqueducto Claudia was able to provide all 14 districts with water. Wow. So this should be much bigger then. If it supplies all 14 districts with water, then this thing should be massive. The hugely relied upon source inexplicably went dry for 9 years, right around the time Nero was building his modest golden palace. His little pet project required vast amounts of water, but luckily the main build site was at the foot of Claudius Castellum, or storage reservoir. When the palace was completed, the water conveniently came back. To this day, historians are baffled as to what caused the drought. I bet dramatic tension. Or maybe Nero sabotaged the thing, who knows. So this is the main aqueduct that supplied. So at one point supplied the entire city of Rome with water. Which is kind of amazing. I mean, the emperors, I don't know, a lot of them just built personal palaces and baths and whatnot, and not really helping the city very much. Let's see. Aqua Virgini, named partially for the virgin waters that flow through its channels, and a myth that 30 Roman soldiers asking for water were led by a beautiful young girl to the source springs. How they knew she was a virgin is pretty self-evident. Right. The Aqua Virgini is the most famous water source in Rome. Its springs provide the Trevi Fountain, the Villa Borghese, the north and south fountains of the Piazza Navona, and the fountains of Piazza del Popolo with their water. None of which you will get to see because they were all built in the mid-16th century. Yeah, there you go. So you don't get to see any of that stuff. Considered to be some of the best drinking water in the world, Romans and visitors line up to fill containers from the fountains. Although after a 2007 construction accident that halted the Virgini's flow temporarily, and the chemical cocktail distilled daily in the Trevi fountain to keep it clean, I'll stick to tea. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want to drink it today, but you know, back in the Roman times, relatively clean. So those are the 4 aqueducts that are in the game. Although, actually, should we follow them? Because this one doesn't actually reach the city. I mean, the city is there. It kind of stops on the outskirts of the city. I don't think any of the aqueducts in the game actually go into the city, although maybe it just goes into an underground system at this point. And I don't know if we should read the Wikipedia article first. Maybe we should do that first. So here I can stand in the water, you know, and dance a bit, and just contaminate the water for all the people of Rome. Alright, so let's go to Wikipedia. Well, let's go to Google Maps. I don't think... I'll just put an aqueduct here, so we need to put in a specific aqueduct, I think. Before... Yeah, this is like in Spain. So the Romans built aqueducts everywhere. And... Wait a minute. Not much to see there, is it? So the maps is not going to be helpful unless we type in a specific name. Now let's see, here's some diagrams. So here are the images. So basically giant bridges. But usually these span across valleys, so I guess most of it is actually on the surface of the ground, wherever possible. And they only bridge across when necessary. Like, water of course flows downhill. So you can't ever have the aqueduct go uphill. So when you get into a valley like this, you need to span across it so that at the other side they don't have to go over the hill. Here's a diagram. So the old aqueduct, you see how Yeah, it flows downhill from the reservoir and over the valleys and then into the city. Whereas the modern aqueducts, they can go underground because they can waterproof the pipes. And so then the pressure of the water itself would push it back uphill on the other side of the valley. But you know, back in the Roman times, they couldn't actually completely waterproof the aqueducts. More diagrams. Not that helpful. What's this? That's kind of cool. That's a reconstruction of old aqueducts. Wait a minute, is that like a city wall and aqueduct? Just two aqueducts. Not sure why there's two aqueducts crossing each other like that. Doesn't really make sense. What else do we have to look at? Not too much. Not too much. Alright, cool. So, Wikipedia. The Romans constructed numerous aqueducts to bring water from distant sources to the cities and towns, supplying public baths, latrines, fountains, and private households. Wastewater was removed by complex sewage systems and released into nearby bodies of water, keeping the towns clean and free from effluent. Aqueducts also provided water for mining operations, milling, farms, and gardens. So the Roman cities had both aqueducts to supply water and sewage systems to take the waste away. Aqueducts moved water through gravity alone, being constructed along a slight downward gradient with conduits of stone, brick, or concrete. Most were buried beneath the ground and followed its contours. Obstructing peaks were circumvented or less often tunneled through. Where valleys or lowlands intervened, the conduit was carried on bridgework, or its contents fed into high-pressure lead, ceramic, or stone pipes and siphoned across. Alright, so I mean, the most visible ones are these bridgeworks that you see here, but also apparently most were buried in the ground, buried beneath the ground and followed its contours, going around mountains. And then sometimes they also use high-pressure lead, ceramic, or stone pipes, which that's kind of impressive for the ancient Romans. Most aqueduct systems included sedimentation tanks, sluices, and distribution tanks to regulate the supply and need. Um, Wait a minute. Alright. Rome's first aqueduct supplied a water fountain sited at the city's cattle market. By the 3rd century AD, the city had 11 aqueducts, sustaining a population of over 1 million in a water-extravagant economy. Most of the water supplied the city's many public baths. Cities and municipalities throughout the Roman Empire emulated this model and funded aqueducts as objects of public interest and civic pride, an expensive yet necessary luxury to which all could and did aspire. I mean, they call it a luxury, but baths are kind of important. Like when you live in a dense city, hygiene is quite important. Like if the hygiene is bad, then you get kind of plagues and diseases and whatnot, and none of that is good for your health. So, I mean, they call these public baths a luxury, but at the same time, if it prevents, plagues, then it's kind of pretty worthwhile, right? Most Roman aqueducts proved reliable and durable. Some were maintained into the early modern era, and a few are still partly in use. Methods of aqueduct surveying and construction are noted by Vitruvius in his work De Architectura in the 1st century BC. The general Frontinus gives more detail in his official report on the problems, uses, and abuses of Imperial Rome's public water supply. Notable examples of aqueduct architecture include the supporting piers of the Aqueduct of Segovia and the aqueduct-fed cisterns of Constantinople. Interestingly, nothing about Rome, so the runs in Rome aren't actually that notable. Which one is this one? Oh, that's kind of awesome. Alright, that's pretty noticeable. Notable. That is quite notable. Alright. Background. Before the development of aqueduct technology, Romans, like most other contemporaries in the ancient world, relied on local water sources such as springs and streams, supplemented by groundwater from privately or publicly owned wells, and by seasonal rainwater drained from rooftops into storage jars and cisterns. The reliance of ancient communities upon such water resources restricted their potential growth. Rome's aqueducts were not strictly Roman inventions. Their engineers would have been familiar with the water management technologies of Rome's Etruscan neighbors and Greek allies, but they proved conspicuously successful. By the early imperial era, the city's aqueducts supported a population of over 1 million, and an extravagant water supply for public amenities had become a fundamental part of Roman life. The runoff of aqueduct water scoured the sewers of cities and towns. Water from aqueducts was also used to supply villas, ornamental urban and suburban gardens, market gardens, farms, agricultural estates, the latter being the core of Rome's economy and wealth. Wait, agricultural estates being the core of Rome's economy and wealth? I thought the fact that it was the capital of Rome had a part to play with that. List of the aqueducts in the city of Rome. We'll come to this later on. We will come to this later on. The aqueducts in the city of Rome. Rome had several springs within its perimeter walls, but its groundwater was notoriously unpalatable. It is. It seriously is. Like, if you go to Rome, the water is just not that good. Water from the river Tiber was badly affected by pollution and waterborne diseases. The city's demand for water had probably long exceeded its local supplies by 312 BC, when the city's first aqueduct, the Aqua Appia, was commissioned by the censor Appius Claudius Calcasus. The Aqua Appia was one of two major public projects of the time. The other was a strategic road between Rome and Capua, the first leg of the so-called Appian Way. So, aqueducts and roads. So, public infrastructure, basically. It's one of the main things that made Rome successful as an empire. Public utilities. Both projects had significant strategic value, as the Third Samnite War had been underway for some 30 years by that point. The road allowed rapid troop deployments, and by design or fortunate coincidence, most of the Aqua Appia ran within a buried conduct, relatively secure from attack. It was fed by a spring 16.4 kilometers from Rome and dropped 10 meters over its length to discharge approximately 75,500 cubic meters of water each day into a fountain at Rome's cattle market, the Forum Boarium, one of the city's lowest lying public spaces. Did you see that? The spring is 16.4 kilometers away, and the aqueduct only lowers by 10 meters over that length. A second aqueduct, the Old Anio, was commissioned some 40 years later, funded by booty seized from Pyrrhus of Epirus. Why? What happened to him? A Greek general. Oh, he became king of Macedon, and the strongest of one of the strongest opponents of early Rome. Okay, I see. All right, so he eventually lost to Rome, and then so there's a map there. He got invaded by Rome, and all right, retreats from Italy. All right, so the Romans defeated him, looted his stuff, and used it to build a second aqueduct. Awesome. Its flow was more than twice that of the Aqua Appia, and it entered the city on raised arches, supplying water to higher elevations of the city. By 145 BC, the city had again outgrown its combined supplies. An official commission found the aqueduct conduits decayed, their water depleted by leakage and illegal tapping. The praetor Quintus Marcius Rex restored them, and introduced a third, more wholesome supply, the Aqua Marcia, Rome's longest aqueduct and high enough to supply the Capitoline Hill. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Aquamarcia went all the way to the Capitoline Hill? Well, it's definitely not like that in the game. The works cost 180 sesterces or sesterces and took 2 years to complete. 180 million. What are these though? These are ancient Roman coins, small silver coins, issued only on some rare occasions. During the Roman Empire, it was a large brass coin. 180 million coins! Wow! As demand grew still further, more aqueducts were built. The Aqua Tepula in 172 BC and the Aqua Julia in 33 BC. Aqueduct building programs reached a peak in the imperial era. 180 million pieces of silver. That's insane. Anyway, Augustus' reign saw the building of the Aqua Virgo and the short Aqua El Cietina that supplied Trasteveri's artificial lake with water for staged sea fights to entertain the populace. Oh, fun. Another short Augustan aqueduct supplemented the Aqua Murcia with water of excellent quality. The Emperor Caligula added or began 2 aqueducts completed by his successor Claudius. The 69-kilometer Aqua Claudia, which gave good quality water but failed on several occasions, and the Ino Novus, the highest of all Rome's aqueducts and one of the most reliable but prone to muddy, discolored waters, particularly after rain, despite its use of settling tanks. Most of Rome's water supply drew on various springs in the valley and highlands of the Anio, east of the Tiber. A complex system of aqueduct junctions, tributary feeds, and distribution tanks supplied every part of the city. Trastevere, the city's region west of the Tiber, was primarily served by extensions of several of the city's eastern aqueducts carried across the river by lead pipes buried in the roadbed of the river bridges, thus forming an inverted siphon. Hold on, wait a minute. Carried across the river by lead pipes buried in the roadbed of the river bridges, thus floating. Oh, I see. So to cross the water and to get to the other side, the water ran through lead pipes. This wasn't healthy. I mean, they didn't know about the problems of lead at that time. But prolonged exposure to lead causes. Um, Actually, what is it? What exactly is the problem with lead? It causes certain problems. Lead. No, we want lead element. Lead poisoning. Let's see. Health effects. Lead is a highly poisonous metal, affecting almost every organ and system in the body. The main target for lead toxicity is the nervous system, both in adults and children. Long-term exposure of adults can result in decreased performance in some tests that measure functions of the nervous system. Long-term exposure to lead or salts, especially soluble salts, can cause nephropathy and colic-like abdominal pains. What is that? Kidney disease, alright. It may also cause weakness in fingers, wrists, and ankles. Lead exposure also causes more increases in blood pressure. Exposure to high levels can severely damage the brain and kidneys in adults or children and ultimately cause death. So, pretty bad. So they use lead pipes to transport drinking water, which is a really, really bad idea. But nobody knew back then. Whenever this cross-water supply had to be shut down for routine repair and maintenance works, the positively unwholesome waters of the Aqua Elestina was used to supply Trastevere's public fountains. The situation was finally ameliorated when the Emperor Trajan built the Aqua Traiana in 109 AD, bringing clean water directly to Trastevere from aquifers around Lake Bracciano. Bracciano. By the late 3rd century AD, the city was supplied with water by 11 state-funded aqueducts. And I don't think we need to read about the Roman Empire, although this is interesting. Part of an ancient 25-kilometer Roman aqueduct built during the 1st century. So this is carved into the mountain. So this part of it is a mountain tunnel. Planning, surveying, and construction. Springs were by far the most common sources for aqueduct water. Most of Rome's supply came from various springs in the Arno Valley and its uplands. Spring water was fed into a stone or concrete spring house from uphill, then entered the aqueduct conduit. If water was brought in from some distance, the territory over which the aqueduct would run must be carefully surveyed to ensure that the water would flow at an acceptable gradient for the entire distance. Scattered springs would require several branch conduits feeding into a main channel. Some systems drew water from purpose-built dammed reservoirs, such as the two still in use that supplied the aqueduct at the provincial city of Emerita Augusta. In Book 8 of his De Architectura, Veturius describes the need to ensure a constant supply, methods of prospecting, and tests for potable water. Various surveying tools were employed to plot the course of aqueducts across the landscape. Horizontal levels were checked using a chorobates. Actually, I just described on a flat-bedded wooden frame fitted with a water level. Courses and angles could be plotted and checked using a groma, a relatively simple apparatus that was probably displaced by the more sophisticated dioptra, a precursor of the modern theodolite. Oh, interesting. So, it's basically a spirit level, but no illustrations. This is these are the things used to get verticals. Basically, you put a weight on a string, and you get kind of verticals and horizontals and whatnot. Vertical staff with a horizontal crosspiece mounted at right angles on a bracket. Each crosspiece had a plumb line hanging vertically at each end, and was used to survey straight lines and right angles, then squares or rectangles. Yeah. What? Health issues. The association between stagnant waters and waterborne disease was well known. Oh, good. Greek and Roman physicians knew the adverse health effects of lead on those who mined and processed it, and for this reason ceramic pipes were preferred over lead. Oh, they knew! That's interesting. So the ancient Romans knew that stagnant waters and waterborne disease were associated, and also that lead was bad for your health. Where lead pipes were used, a continuous water flow and the inevitable disposition of waterborne minerals within the pipes reduced the water's contamination by soluble lead. Nevertheless, as recent research shows, the level of lead in this water continued to be 100 times higher than in local spring waters. So they knew that lead was a problem, but they had to use it anyway. Conduit and gradients. Most Roman aqueducts were flat-bottomed, arch-section conduits that ran 0.5 to 1 meter beneath the ground surface, with inspection and access covers at regular intervals. So most of it was underground. Conduits above ground were usually slab-topped, so they also covered the aqueducts to make sure that, well, to try to keep them clean, I guess. Early conduits were ashlar built, but from around the late Republican era, brick-faced concrete was often used instead. The concrete used for conduit linings was usually waterproof. They knew how to waterproof concrete. It's not easy. The flow of water depended on gravity alone. The volume of water transported within the conduit depended on the catchment hydrology, rainfall absorption and runoff, the cross-section of the conduit, and its gradient. Most conduits ran about 2/3 full. The conduit's cross-section was also determined by maintenance requirements. Workmen must be able to enter and access the hole with minimal disruption to its fabric. Vitruvius recommends a low gradient of not less than 1 in 4,800 for the channel, presumably to prevent damage to the structure through erosion and water pressure. This value agrees well with the measured gradients of surviving masonry aqueducts. The gradients of the Pont du Gard is only 34 centimeters per kilometer, 3.4 to 10,000, descending only 17 meters vertically in its entire length of 50 kilometers. It could transport up to 20,000 cubic meters a day. The gradients of temporary aqueducts used for hydraulic mining could be considerably greater, as at Dolocothe in Wales. Is that supposed to be in Welsh? Anyway, with a maximum gradient of about 1 to 700. That's still pretty low, 1 to 700. Every 7 meters it goes down 1 centimeter, basically. So that's I mean that's not steep. That's pretty shallow. And Las Medulas in northern Spain, where sharp gradients were unavoidable in permanent conduits, the channel could be stepped downwards, widened, or discharged into a receiving tank to disperse the flow of water and reduce its abrasive force. The use of stepped cascades and drops also helped reoxygenate and thus freshen the water. So having okay, I see. So apparently the flatter it is, the less erosion there is on the aqueduct, because it's not like it's like the water's going horizontal. It's not dropping down. Every time it drops down, once it hits the bottom, it causes erosion, right? So the more it goes horizontally and not down, the less the erosion is apparently. The combined conduit length of aqueducts in the city of Rome is estimated between 780 to a little over 800 kilometers, of which approximately 47 kilometers were carried above ground level on masonry supports. So only about 1/20th is actually these sorts of visible bridge things. Mostly it's just underground tunnels. They supplied around 1 million cubic meters a day, a capacity 126% of the current water supply of the city of Bangalore. Well, the city of Bangalore is just not very well supplied, is it? Which is a population of 6 million. Yeah, Bangalore is just not very well supplied. The longest Roman aqueduct system was that of Constantinople. The known system is at least 2.5 times the length of the longest recorded Roman aqueducts at Carthage and Cologne. But perhaps more significantly, it represents one of the most outstanding surveying achievements of any pre-industrial society. Perhaps the second longest, the Zakhalwan Aqueduct, is 92.5 kilometers in length and was built in the 2nd century to supply Carthage in modern Tunisia. Catchment basin, interesting. Bridgeworks and siphons. Conduits could be supported across valleys or hollows in arches of masonry, brick, or concrete. The Pont du Gard, one of the most impressive surviving examples of a massive masonry multiple-piered conduit, also served as a road bridge. Where particularly deep or lengthy depressions had to be crossed, inverted siphons could be used instead. Here the conduit terminated in a header tank which fed the water into pipes. These crossed the valleys at a lower level, supported by a low venter bridge, rose to a receiving tank at a slightly lower elevation, and discharged into another conduit. The overall gradient was maintained. Siphon pipes were usually made of soldered lead, because they have to be waterproof, completely waterproof and airproof for the siphoning to work. So they had to use soldered lead, sometimes reinforced by concrete encasements or stone sleeves. Less often, the stone or the pipes themselves were stone or ceramic, jointed as male-female and seated with lead, and sealed with lead, my bad. So it could also be stone or ceramic, but also had to be sealed with lead. Vitruvius describes the construction of siphons and the problems of blockage, blowouts, and venting at their lowest levels, where the pressure were greatest. Nevertheless, siphons were versatile and effective if well built and well maintained. A horizontal section of high-pressure siphon tubing in the aqueduct of the Gia was ramped up on bridgework to clear a navigable river using 9 lead pipes in parallel, encased in concrete. Amazing! So it goes down into the valley, but bridges up over a river where boats had to pass, and uses 9 lead pipes in parallel, encased in concrete. Wow. Modern hydraulic engineers use similar techniques to enable sewers and water pipes to cross depressions. Yes. So it's still... Can we see the thing? No, we can't. There's no pictures of the actual crossing of the bridge at the bottom. Never mind. Inspection, maintenance, and regulation. Roman aqueducts required a comprehensive system of regular maintenance to repair accidental breaches, to clear the conduits of gravel and other loose debris, and to remove channel-narrowing accretions of calcium carbonate in systems fed by hard water sources. Comprehensive system of regular maintenance, alright. Inspections and access points were provided at regular intervals on standard buried conduits. Siphons that used hard water supplies would have presented particular maintenance problems due to the narrow diameter of the pipes, but lead, ceramic, and stone pipes were made in fairly short lengths whose damaged or blocked sections could be replaced or cleared. Some had sealed openings that might have been used as rodding eyes, possibly using a pull-through device. So basically, you kind of pull the thing through the pipe to try to clear it. Drain rods. Not that useful, but you poke a hole in the blockage through the hole in the pipe, if that makes sense. Little is known of the day-to-day business of aqueduct maintenance teams. Theirs was probably a demanding and never-ending routine punctured by occasional emergencies. Full closure of any aqueduct for servicing would have been a rare event, kept as brief as possible, with repairs preferably made when water demand was lowest, which was presumably at night. Some form of registry was probably kept of licensed fee-paying private users, and the bore of pipe that led water from the public supply to their private property. The wider the pipe, the greater the flow and the greater the fee. Tampering and fraud to avoid or reduce payments were commonplace. Methods included the fitting of unlicensed outlets, additional outlets, and the illegal widening of lead pipes, any of which might involve the bribery or connivance of unscrupulous aqueduct officials or workers. This is all speculation, right? There's no specific examples. I mean, it's not surprising, but there's no specific examples. Official lead pipes carried inscriptions with information on the pipe's manufacturer, its fitter, and probably on its subscriber and their entitlement. During the Imperial era, the granting of rights to draw water for private use from official aqueducts was made an imperial privilege. Uses, civil and domestic. Rome's first aqueduct discharged at very low pressure and at a more or less constant rate in the city's main trading center and cattle market, probably into a low-level cascaded series of troughs or basins, the upper for household use, the lower for watering the livestock traded there. Most Romans would have filled buckets and storage jars at the basins and carried the water to their apartments. The better off would have sent slaves to perform the same task. The outlet's elevation was too low to offer any city household or building a direct supply. The overflow drained into Rome's main sewer and from there into the Tiber. At this time, Rome had no public baths. The first were probably built in the next century based on precursors in neighboring Campania. A limited number of private baths and small corner public baths would have had a private water supply, but once aqueduct water was brought into the city's higher elevations, large and well-appointed public baths could be sited throughout the city, and drinking water could be delivered to public fountains at high pressure. Public baths and fountains became distinctive features of Roman civilization, and the baths in particular became important social centers. The majority of urban Romans lived in multi-story blocks of flats. Some blocks offered water services, but only to tenants on the more expensive lower floors. The rest would have drawn their water gratis from public fountains. Interesting. Yeah, so the lower floors are more expensive because you don't have to climb the stairs as much. Farming. Between 65 and 90% of the Roman Empire's population was involved in some form of agricultural work. Alright. Farmers whose villas or estates were near a public aqueduct could draw under license a specified quantity of aqueduct water for summer irrigation at a predetermined time. This was intended to limit the depletion of water supply to users further down the gradient and help ensure a fair distribution among competitors at the time when water was most needed and scarce. Water was possibly the most important variable in the agricultural economy of the Mediterranean world. Roman Italy's natural water sources, springs, streams, rivers, and lakes were unevenly distributed across the landscape, and water tended to scarcity when most needed during warm, dry summer growing season. Columella recommends that any farm should contain a spring, stream, or water or river, but acknowledges that not every farm did. On the whole, Roman communities took care to allocate shared water resources according to need. But in summer, rain-fed water sources could fail and ponds and cisterns grow foul. Farmland without a reliable summer water source was virtually worthless. It has been estimated that during the growing season, the water demand of a modest local irrigation system might consume as much water as the city of Rome. Added to this, the livestock whose manure fertilized the fields must be fed and watered all year round. At least some Roman landowners and farmers relied in part or whole on aqueduct water to raise crops as their primary or sole source of income, but the fraction of aqueduct water involved can only be guessed at. More certainly, the creation of municipal and city aqueducts brought a growth in the intensive and efficient suburban market farming of fragile, perishable commodities such as flowers for perfumes and festival garlands, grapes, vegetables, and orchard fruits, and of small livestock such as pigs and chickens, close to the municipal and urban markets. If you guys kind of missed that, basically there's kind of suburban market farming. So the farm kind of high value produce and livestock close to the city, using the aqueduct water, like kind of like small scale intensive farming of high value produce to be consumed in the city itself. Uh, a licensed right to aqueduct water on farmland could lead to increased productivity, an increase in land value, and a cash income through the sale of surplus foodstuffs. In the countryside, permissions to draw water from aqueducts for irrigation were particularly hard to get. The exercise and abuse of such rights were subject to various known legal disputes and judgments. At least one political campaign in the early 2nd century BC, Cato tried to block all unlawful rural outlets, especially those owned by the landed elite. Look how much he bought the land for, and he is channeling the water during his censorship. His attempted reform proved impermanent at best, though illegal tapping could be punished by seizure of assets, including the illegally watered land and its produce. This law seems never to have been used, and was probably impractical. Food surpluses kept prices low, and also the landowners were likely to be rich and powerful and influential. Grain shortages in particular could lead to famine and social unrest. Any practical solution must strike a balance between the water needs of urban populations and grain producers, tax the latter's profits, and secure sufficient grain at reasonable cost for the Roman poor and the army. Rather than seek to impose unproductive and probably unenforceable bans, the authorities issued individual water rights, though seldom in rural areas, and licenses, and regulated water outlets with variable success. In the 1st century AD, Pliny the Elder, like Cato, could fulminate against grain producers who continued to wax fat on profits from public water and public land. Yeah. But, yeah, okay. So the water kept being stolen by people who used it to grow grain and food. But, you know, what are you going to do? Some landholders avoided such restrictions and entanglements by buying water access rights to distant springs, not necessarily on their own land. A few of high wealth and status built their own aqueducts to transport such water from source to field or villa. Mummius Niger Velarius Vegetus brought the rights to a spring and its water from his neighbor, and access rights to a corridor of intervening land, then built an aqueduct of just under 10 kilometers from the spring head to its own villa. The plans and permissions for this Aqua Vegetinia Still required senatorial scrutiny and consent, which was given only when the project seemed not to impinge on the water rights of other citizens. Interesting. Industrial mining, this is not really relevant to Rome, although you also need water for mining and milling. Decline in use, oh this is interesting. With the fall of the Roman Empire, some aqueducts were deliberately cut by enemies, but many more fell into disuse through lack of organized maintenance. Their failure had an impact on the population of cities. Rome's declined from its high of over 1 million in the Imperial era to as low as 30,000 in the medieval era. So once the water stopped, people had to leave. Observation, or they had to leave or die. Observations by the Spaniard Pedro Tafo, who visited Rome in 1436, reveal misunderstandings of the very nature of the Roman aqueducts. Through the middle of the city runs a river, which the Romans brought there with great labor and set in their midst, and this is the Tiber. They made a new bed for the river, so it is said, of lead and channels at one of the of lead and channels at one and the other end of the city for its entrances and exits, both for watering horses and for other services convenient to the people, and anyone entering it at any other spot would be drowned. Wait, what? That makes no sense. so, so not only did they let the aqueducts fall into ruin, people just didn't know what they were for or how Rome got its water supply. During the Renaissance, the standing remains of the city's massive masonry aqueducts inspired architects, engineers, and their patrons. Pope Nicholas V renovated the main channels of the Roman Aquevergo in 1453. Many aqueducts in Rome's former empire were kept in good repair. In the 15th century, rebuilding of the aqueduct at Segovia in Spain shows advances on the Pontigad by using fewer arches of greater height, and so greater economy in its use of raw materials. The skill in building aqueducts was not lost, especially of the smaller, more modest channels used to supply water wheels. Most such mills in Britain were developed in the medieval period for bread production, and used similar methods as that developed by the Romans with leads tapping local rivers and streams. So, I mean, so the technology for building smaller aqueducts were not lost, but they didn't really have the resources anymore to build the giant projects that the Roman Empire could afford. Because the whole empire had the resources to build these giant things that spans multiple kilometers, right? But the technology kind of was still there. Like people still knew how to build aqueducts, just no one could afford to build really big ones anymore. And that's the history of aqueducts. All right, good. So, which ones were the ones in the game? Let me just look at the names again. And let's see if we can look up the 4 in the game and see what they're like in real life. Locations, aqueduct. So it's Antoniniana, Marcia, Claudia, and Virginie. So Marcia. In fact, most of it is not even here. Wait a minute. This is the Virgin one, right? Yeah. That's the other one. Wait a minute. Up here. Oh crap! I closed them. Why did I do that? That's only 2 of them. Antonia, Marcia, Virginie, Claudia. Claudia, there you go. Where's the other one? Oh. Anyway, the other one is a branch of one of the other ones anyway, I think. Capacity in cubic meters per day, average gradient. Interesting. Alright, the Aquavergo is in the wrong place in game. What? Aquavergo is there. Circus Maximus is down here. Colosseum. It's there? The red line, which in the map would be... Oh, wait, it is right. Well, it should be like here. No, it's not. It's wrong. It should be up here. Unless there's another aqueduct that way, and there isn't. Oh crap, why did I do that? Why did I jump off like an idiot? So the aqueduct is in the wrong place. Huh. Let's get back up. Yeah, the aqueduct is supposed to be there. Actually, what did I do? Don't jump off the aqueduct. No, why would you? Wow, you can grab that? Alright, let's get back up. And let's try not to jump off the aqueduct again. Come on, Desmond. Come on. Alright. So, Aqueduct was one of the 11 Roman aqueducts that supplied the city of ancient Rome. The aqueduct fell into disuse with the fall of the Roman Empire, but was fully restored nearly a whole millennium later, during the Renaissance, to take its current form as the Aqua Virgini. The Aqueduct was completed in 19 BC by Marcus Agrippa, during the reign of the Emperor Augustus. Claudius retained its life furthermore through restoration. Its source is along the 8th milestone of the Via Colatina, about 3 kilometers from the Via Praenestina. According to a legend repeated by Frontinus, thirsty Roman soldiers asked a young girl for water. She directed them to the springs that later supplied the aqueduct. The source was named the Aqueduct after her. Along its more than 20-kilometer length, the aqueduct dropped only 4 meters to reach Rome in the center of the Campus Martius. At its height, the aqueduct was capable of supplying more than 100,000 cubic meters of water every day. The aqueduct ran underground for nearly all of its length. In 537, the Goths besieging Rome tried to use this underground channel as a secret route to invade Rome, according to Procopius. After deteriorating with the fall of the Roman Empire, Aqueduct was repaired by Pope Adrian I in the 8th century, following a complete restoration and extensive remodeling from its source to its terminus points, from Pincio to the Quirinale, and within Campo Marzio. In 1453, Pope Nicholas V consecrated its Aqua Virgini. Alright. And there's an old fountain, so it's in the wrong place in the game. Aqua Appia is the one to the south. Aqua Claudia? Where is it? Where's the map? There's no map. Huh. Although, not much of it remains. So, Aqua Appia is the other one in the game. So this one is kind of in the wrong place. Or it runs in the wrong direction. It should enter the city there, but it doesn't. So let's just run along this thing and go to the other aqueduct. Because that's the other one. That's Aqua Appia. Although, wait a minute, so it enters the city there. Let me just check this again. It enters the city there. Maybe it... No, it's definitely the wrong place. It's definitely not quite right. Oh well. So it's supposed to enter the city there, but that's not very accurate. Where can I jump off? Let's try this way. No, jump off. Alright, mostly survived. And the other aqueduct would be much further to the south. We can't even see it, can we? Can't even see it yet. Also, what is the best way to get down here? Maybe we should call our horse. Alright, horse. Yes, magic horse.
Yeah.
Can I get through here? Yes. No. Why am I behind the houses? Alright, let's go south. Oh, there it is. It's right there. Alright, so we found the aqueduct. We just need to get to it and get onto it. Oh wait, this is the one that goes to the baths, isn't it? How do I get up onto this thing? And then the other branch is up here. This is a branch of it. So let's come here to the fork. There's the Colosseum there. I feel like this is also the wrong shape. Not sure. Anyway, here's the branch. Alright, so it's here. It goes to the south of the Colosseum. And the branch of it goes up to there, right? And that's kind of right. Although maybe we're interested in... Because, like, at the south... If you look at the map, at the south it goes down to the south of the Circus Maximus and then turns north. And stabs right into the middle of Rome. Right there. So maybe I wanna... see where this one ends. Let me just get back on the horse. Horse? Horse. Alright, horse. Just see where this one ends.
Hey, hey!
It ends right here? Seriously? Alright, never mind. It ends right here. So it doesn't actually supply the city of Rome in the game. Alright, so Wikipedia has a short article. Aqua Appia was the first Roman aqueduct. It was constructed in 312 BC by Appius Claudius Caesar, or Caesar, the same Roman censor who built the important Via Appia. Its source, which Frontinus identifies as being about 780 paces away from Via Praenestina, was allegedly established by Caius Plautius Venox. The Aqua Appia flowed for 16.4 kilometers, entered the city of Rome through the Porta Capena, and emptied into the Forum Boarium, near the Porta Trigemina. Nearly all of its length was underground, which was necessary because of the relative height of its source and destination, and afforded it protection from attackers during the Samnite Wars that were underway during its construction. It dropped only 10 meters over its entire length, making it a remarkable engineering achievement for its day. Frontinus calculated that the aqueduct was capable of delivering 1,825 quinariae, or 75,537 cubic meters of water a day to Rome. Alright, so not much of an article there. And the Aqua Claudia was an aqueduct of ancient Rome that, unlike the Ino Novus, was begun by Emperor Caligula. Oh, that liked the Ino Novus. In 38 AD and finished by Emperor Claudius in 52 AD. The Aqua Claudia was built between the dates of 38 AD to 52 AD, which was approximately 14 years. Why does that need to be a sentence? Its main springs, the Caeruleus and Curtius, were situated 300 paces to the left of the 38th milestone of the Via Sublescensus. Subiaco, which was 45 miles away from Rome, was also a water source. The channel length was 45 to 46 miles, and volume at the springs was 191,190 cubic meters in 24 hours. Following Nero's completion of the Arcus Neroniani, one of the aqueduct's branches, the Aqua Claudia could provide all 14 Roman districts with water. Directly after its filtering tank near the 7th mile of the Via Latina, it finally emerged into arches which increased in height as the ground falls towards the city. It was also one of the two ancient aqueducts that flowed through the Porta Maggiore, the other being the Ino Novus. It is described in some detail by Frontinus in his work published in the later 1st century, the Aqueductu. The church of Saint Tommaso in Formis was later built into the side of the aqueduct. The Aqua Claudia maintained its structure and appearance for so long because of the ingredients inside the concrete. Romans would mix in volcanic ash, which was a benefit for the concrete because it made the concrete stronger and durable. The aqueduct was powered by gravity where it drops 1 foot exactly every 300 feet. Part of the structure was on solid ground while 9.5 miles of the structure was borne on lofty arches. These lofty arches were measured to be over 100 feet high. The measurements of this invention turned out to be 69 kilometers long and it delivered 185 cubic meters of water per day to the city. Although the Aqua Claudia was a success at first, it did have its fault where work had to be done on it again. The aqueduct went through 2 repairs during its standing. It was said that the Aqua Claudia was used for 10 years, then failed and was out of use for 9 years. Being out of use really set the townspeople back. Who wrote this? It's kind of really bad English. Set the townspeople back on how their lifestyle were before the Aqua Claudia was completed. The first repair was done by Emperor Vespasian in 71 AD. 10 years after the Aqua Claudia's first repair in 71 AD, it was repaired again in 81 AD by Emperor Titus. Some possible causes for the repairs could have been cracking of the concrete, which would have led to leakage or an object. This is speculation. Speculation. Can we just leave this speculation crap out of the Wikipedia? Anyway, so there's a few of the aqueducts of Rome. Most of the aqueducts are not actually in the game. Not sure how accurate that is at this point in time in the game. Actually, let's go to Rome. Did we try to find some of these aqueducts before? I think we looked at the map of Rome or the aerial photos of Rome. So there's Rome. The old city is around there. Did we see any aqueducts the last time? Don't really remember. Where are the walls again? So what am I looking at? River Tiber. Okay, the old walls. Oh, there's a train tracks, that's right. I think we saw a few aqueducts. There's not many remaining. Yeah, let's not bother with that. Alright, so those are the aqueducts of Rome. I don't think there's too much else to say about those. So what should we look at next in the next video? Maybe we'll go through the Roman ruins in the next video. Not too much to see in the game, but we do want to look at the Roman forums and maybe a few of the baths and whatnot. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video.